good to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally get that. And I know that with some of the trail work that we do on Sundays is really fun because a lot of mountain bikers come out and there's like there's a young group. Our friend Alex is he's a teacher at the school and he has this just like club of boys between the ages of like 7 and 14 right now, and they are just so excited about being outside and doing trail work and getting involved. And so they come to every trail work event, and it's so funny watching them just like get really excited to build all these ramps and like how deep can we make this turn and how steep can we make this hill. And so it's really fun, but it's also like I appreciate being like sometimes the only runner there being like, but make sure people can run on this too, because not all trail runners like to like huck themselves off ramps or like, around 90-degree turns going downhill. But it's been really fun, and it's cool to see the community really rally and get involved. I mean, like everyone that shows up at the race was also at trail work, who was also at the group rides, who's also at their like community rides, there are kids rides, there are women specific rides. So it's a really cool way to get to know everyone. And I know specifically like in Boulder, a lot of the mountain bikers, if you'd run up at Batasso, like I think it was Wednesdays and Saturdays, bikes weren't allowed, so it was only open to foot traffic on those days, and so there was a lot of headbutting between the runners and the bikers, and it's so cool to know and see in real time that we can all work together to make the trails better for everyone. And I think that that's really cool. Just like everyone's got different opinions, everyone's got different ideas of what could be cool or what could work or what couldn't work. But until you're actually out there, digging the trail, putting the rocks in, throwing the gravel and dirt on top, like it's a really cool process of problem solving and just, like learning and unlearning. So I don't know. I've just been having a blast.
Well, it makes sense. And in the end, we're all out there to do the same thing. Just enjoy being outside and get a workout and, do all that. That's really awesome. I was trying to think like our community, our run community here, I guess races and whatnot have started to kind of start again, I guess you could say, after a long hiatus due to COVID. And I haven't gotten to participate in a race yet. And I know we talked about this a couple months ago, but I'm like itching to get that like volunteerism thing going again. I didn't know if anyone on the call has gotten to volunteer for a race recently. Like curious if you've like jumped back in, haven't skipped a beat, or if there's been like a learning process or like, oh, I think I forgot how to do this or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
No, nobody's gotten to volunteer yet. So it looks like Caitlin's volunteering this Saturday, so maybe we can talk about it next week too. But I'm just anxious, I guess.
We've
Yeah.
got some people volunteering at Western States coming up, a couple of my athletes, and I've had a couple athletes as well also volunteer at races last summer and earlier this summer. Yeah, Tom is one. He's normally on this call. But from what I've heard, it's or Jen and Pete can obviously always comment since they're race directors too. Yeah, but from what I've heard, the process is a little bit different. But it seems to be getting better and better, especially for the volunteers. There's like a bit of risk involved with, I feel like you're encountering a lot of people. You don't know if everybody's vaccinated or not. There might be some, I don't know, droplets in the air because everybody's breathing heavily and coughing and very excited at the race. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of volunteers are wearing masks and things like that if they're not vaccinated. But I don't know if maybe Jen and Pete can comment more because I'm sure you guys are planning a race for this summer, right?
Yeah, we have a summer race coming up on August 7th. Honestly, we're still figuring out what the final rules are going to be for it. From what we've seen, the other races that have gone off around here, at least in like the ultra space, they got rid of like all masks, everything. Like It's just normal for them. We haven't decided how we feel about it yet. Like, I think with a normal ultra, like people are spread out for, 50K, 50 miles, whatever it is, but we're a loop race. So you've got the party at the pit essentially. So I don't know if we'll just have.
We're still gonna have like single serve type stuff. Know that.
Yeah, but we haven't really talked through like the mask rules or anything like that for our volunteers. But we know like most of the people that we do have coming from a volunteer standpoint, all of our friends are at least vaccinated. So we can vouch for like 90%, 95% of the volunteers we're gonna have as vaxxed. But yeah, we're still figuring out what we're actually gonna do on race day.
Cool.
There's a race here that just went down that I am like, I guess, an assistant to the race director kind of thing. I wasn't able to make it out there, but they talked about single serve, just like you guys are doing, Jen and Pete, but also like trying to make sure that runners don't touch stuff like on the table, like have volunteers actually hand them stuff that they needed. So I was trying to think from like a different perspective, from a runner's perspective. I don't know if that would be like a good thing or not, where you're so used to like, maybe it takes more time in an aid station. So I don't know if anyone like, when they do like their race plans and they plan on specific times in aid stations or how long, like I'm going to spend 5 minutes here, 3 minutes here, whatever it is, that maybe like a more little longer in aid stations. I don't know if you guys have thought about that either or how that would work.
Yeah, we pulled off the race last year in August. So we did a full race like in the thick of COVID. So the way we did it, really just had everything like the runners were made aware of it several times. Like it's on the website, it's on the ultra sign up page, it's in the email communications. Like if you need a sandwich, you're gonna have to ask for it. We're gonna make it for you. Like volunteer, like the food will still be the same, but you're gonna have to anticipate a little bit more time. So like we told runners, we encourage you, like if you want to bring your own food, because it makes more sense. If you're somebody who's trying to win this race, like using the aid station, sure, you can do that, but to maximize your time, come self-supported, because that's probably going to be the fastest route for you. Again, it's a little bit different for us too, just from a loop nature, just because you get a lot more crowding at our aid station, whereas I think it might be a little more spread out and not as big of a deal for the longer races. But it's, we just like reiterate countless times at a time to make sure people just plan for that so no one gets upset on race day.
I like the idea of a self-supported kind of deal. I think in a lot of cases, or I've experienced in a lot of like road marathons, that sometimes you go through aid stations that are so crowded that you really can't, and this is non-COVID related, but sometimes aid stations that are so crowded that it's kind of hard to get in there and get what you need and get out. And sometimes aid stations will I guess advertise that they'll have certain products or certain this or that, and they're out sometimes. And so I think generally speaking, if you're comfortable with it, taking as much water, nutrition, whatever it is, maybe on some of those shorter runs. Obviously for longer runs you'll need assistance as the race goes on, but trying to take as much with you as possible so that there's less chance of having issues as the run goes on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think too that like I've got celiac disease, and so a lot of times I get kind of nervous going into aid stations where people are touching all the M&Ms, or like someone might have grabbed a handful of Oreos before that, and like I'm pretty sensitive, so that would affect me. That would probably harm my race. So I have to show up pretty self-supported most of the time, and the only time I really like stop at aid stations is to refill water. So depends on the distance that I'm going, obviously, if I like stop for a couple of minutes or just run through, but kind of having it all dialed beforehand is pretty key for me. And I know that, I mean, one of my first 50Ks, I had no idea what to expect. And I ended up packing like 3 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, thinking I'd eat them in the course of a 50K. And like, that didn't happen, And so I was like overly prepared, to the point of just being like a total noob, and just, it's embarrassing to think about. But as the years have gone on and the miles have progressed, it's nice to have, an extra gel, even just on normal runs. I try to go out the door, if I'm doing like a Sacred Friday shuffle run, having a gel in hand, just in case, because bonking is the worst feeling in the world. And just making sure that I've got something with me at all times. And if I don't use it, like, you're gonna if you're racing, there's definitely going to be someone that you see who might need it. So
I
it's always good.
absolutely love the idea of packing like the emergency gel. I think like this past weekend, I've got a couple athletes that are getting up in mileage where they're like, all right, this is a run where I'm going to start to need to take nutrition with me. I'm like, all right, this is what you're going to do. Let's try every 30 minutes taking something. So like, okay, cool. So that's going to be like, maybe I need to take 3 gels with me. I'm like, yeah, take 3 and an extra just in case. Always have an extra. And it's just so funny. I've been there before. I'm sure all of us have, where you get to the point where you're like, I didn't pack enough. This is going to be bad. It's just downhill from there.
You can also, I think a good tip too is to use the drop bag. If you're like not sure about what the lines are going to be like at your race, if they're, going to have COVID protocol or, a giant free for all at the aid stations, maybe carry what you need up until that drop bag point and then refresh your kit at the drop bag point and then finish with what you need. I always think that it's better to have a strong understanding of what you need nutrition wise before the race. We talk about this on so many different calls. It's nice to like have all of the options at the aid station. But I look at that as more of like an emergency. Like if I need a little bit of chips or a Coke to get some extra sodium in, maybe to change things up, like I'll hit the aid station. But I know what works for me. And so like, I'm going to carry that stuff. I'm going to have a crew member give me more of that stuff during the race, or a drop bag with it in. And I'm only going to use the aid station, like if I need to refill a bottle or something, my flasks, whatever it is. That way you can cut down on some time. Cause too, like for some athletes, like the cutoffs really make a big difference. So like if you're stalling in an aid station, looking at all the food options, like, is it the banana slices or the oranges or the watermelon, or should I dunk my hand in that M&Ms? Like, cool, that's fun, but you're wasting maybe a little bit of time. So, if you're pushing yourself, doing a race that you've never done before, maybe you're a little concerned about those cutoffs. Any time where you can like get time back, it's going to be really, really key. So having a crew member there who can just give you your nutrition and then you can be on your way, or having an idea of exactly what you need so you can ask for it at the aid station, take it and go, rather than like doing it buffet style where you take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and it's all guesswork. And you don't know how any of it's going to go down inside your stomach after you eat it. I would say figure it out before you get out there. That's going to help you a ton and save you time. I think it's really interesting also, like some of the comments here about like everything is pre-COVID style at these last couple races, like Bryce Canyon, that was like a few weeks ago. And Dirty 30 was just last weekend, which are 2 really big races here in the West. Wow, I'm personally kind of surprised that it seems like there was no protocol, but hey, we can go to the store and not wear a mask anymore. So I guess there's no difference if you're outside at an station. I'm curious. I haven't raced in a long time, not since January, so I don't really know personally. But
I was
it's
surprised
too,
from
by
other
athletes.
And I know that during I did the Black Canyon 60K in February, and one thing that I do if I know it's going to be a longer race, or especially in COVID times, when even if they do take precautions, they close down a lot of the aid stations to your crew. And so I utilized the drop bag like you were talking about, TJ. But what I did was I had a spare vest, and so I just packed that for the second half of the race and just switched out to save myself time. So I knew I had enough, calories and water and carbohydrate drink mix to get through the last 25 miles. And that really cut down a lot of time.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I mean, obviously, like the more prepared you can be for this stuff, and the less like decision making and guesswork you can take out of it on race day, the more energy you're going to save for the event itself. You know, decision making and making choices at an aid station and all of that, that requires energy, brain power, and things that you're going to be lacking at the end of these long runs. So I would recommend saving energy wherever you can. You know, for me, that's like, you know, making less choices. Some people think about that in like the course of the day, actually. I don't know if you guys have ever read any of Steve Magnus's books, but he talks a lot about I don't know, different CEOs and successful musicians and stuff like that. Like they totally take all the decision making out of their days, so they have all this energy to, you know, give to their creative pursuits or to their training or whatever it is. So like one thing that always kind of stands out to me is like I can't remember if it was like Zuckerberg or Bezos. They wear the same outfit every day. So they never have to decide what they wear in the morning. They think that that's a waste of energy. Well, maybe that's a little extreme, but I kind of think that like if you have to decide what you're going to eat at every single aid station during a 50-mile race or 100-mile race, you're definitely wasting energy out there. So take, you know, that example and use it how you want in your life, but making choices does take energy, the thought, weighing through the pros and the cons, the consequences of your choices, and whatnot while you're out there. You know, that decision-making process, and eventually it all adds up, and you need everything that you can to get to that finish line. At least I do. Oh, cool. Sarah wrote something in here. Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So somebody else is talking about that concept of limiting all those daily choices. Yeah, cool. I love that. I don't buy any new clothes. I just like grab what's in my drawer. It really helps me out. When I have to decide on all of your guys' training every single day, gives me a little bit more brain power to do that. Yeah, cool. Oh man, I thought it was really interesting. I kind of jumped in late, but I thought it was really interesting to talk about the mountain bike trails and whatnot and the protocol there. And just kind of listening in. I'm not sure who started that conversation or if it was kind of just based on one of these questions that I see here in the chat. But man, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I'll put it out there. A lot of the trails that we have where I live were built by mountain bikers, not by trail runners. So, you know, I always feel like there's a certain debt of gratitude that the runner has to give to the mountain biking community out here for having kind of that like forward thinking mentality about going out and building new trails, developing new trail networks and all of that. I think it's super cool. But the mountain biker like always develops like a specific kind of trail, right? Like they flow in a different way, or I consider them like a lot of like pump track where there's kind of like these gradual ups and downs, or like when they go across corners, there's always a bit of a climb. And I find those trails like really challenging. And just getting into that conversation a little bit reminded me, Drew, of the back 40 trails up in your neck of the woods. And I got I had the opportunity to run there last January and really thought those trails were cool. But by the time I had finished that loop, I had felt like I had done like a mountain run. I was so tired from pushing those like slight uphills. They just add up over the course of a long run. And it kind of go ahead, Kristen.
Well, I was gonna say, it's so funny. It reminds, like, running on mountain bike trails, like with the super punchy climbs, the sharp turns, things like that. It reminds me a lot of running in Moab or in the desert, because there's always like the up and down, up and down, up and down, and then you're on slick rock, and then you're on sand, and then you're on, you know, gravel, and then you're sinking in the sand again. And it's just like, it's so hard. They're so hard.
It's just it's hard to get your flow. Kind of like TJ, you mentioned it. I really like that word when mountain bikers are out there, like that's kind of what it's all for. It's that rhythm and that flow that you get out there and ride your bike. With runners, you do the same thing. You get in a zone or a mode or whatever you want to call it. And when you have a lot of changes in the footing or I'm not even going to call it elevation. I just call them speed bumps when you're out there doing this kind of stuff. But it's just hard to get in that groove, so to speak.
Oh man, those rollers just killed me. Yeah, like that up and down. It eventually like gets your legs like steep descents do. And then it gets your aerobic system because you don't want to lose your speed on those little hills because you see, that on the backside of that little hill, it's going to be flat for a while. So you like want to keep your paces even. But in order to get up that hill, you have all the resistance of the hill. And even though it's short and like, I don't think there was a single hill on the back 40 loop that I couldn't really see the top of. But when I finished that loop, it had like 2,000 feet of climbing. So it's just like pretty decent for a 20-mile loop. And I really felt it. And it kind of brought to mind like this larger training idea of like, when do we run the uphills and, on our easy runs, like when are we supposed to run those uphills and when should we, power hike the uphills? And I know like for a lot of the athletes that we coach, like it's impossible to go out on a run and not encounter a hill. For me here in Carbondale, which is a flattish place with mountains all around, as soon as I leave the town center, even on a town run, my 10-mile run has 400 or 500 feet of climbing. But I can see the top of every hill. And so I often think about the pump track, these mountain bike trails and things like that, where, you've got these short, but they're kind of steep and you can feel it, you're going uphill, you feel the resistance, you feel your effort climbing, you feel your heart rate going up. And sometimes I ask myself, man, is it like okay to run this hill? And I think, the answer is most of the time, yes, it's probably fine to run those hills, right? Like it's okay to push yourself a little bit. Most likely you're building a little bit of extra economy by bringing in that resistance of the hill. And I think like, especially if you're feeling good, that's kind of my main thing. I've been thinking a little bit about this and I don't know, maybe it's a little off topic for the call that we've been having today. But on those mountain bike trails, if you're feeling tired, if you're not having your best day, if it's hot, you can hike those. Don't be shy about it. You can hike those hills, even if you see the top of them. And if you're having a good day out there, you're feeling the flow, you can respond to that as well, even if it brings your heart rate up a little bit closer to maybe aerobic threshold, maybe that kind of gray area.
TJ, do you have any tips? I know that after talking to some friends here who mountain bike, there was a race here in town. We kind of talked about it a little bit before. But what do you have any tips for when you are trying to keep your heart rate low going uphill? Because I know that sometimes I don't know, I've noticed a spike before if I'm going straight up something like pretty steep, or just in different situations my heart rate will spike or it'll level out or it'll spike again. So do you have any tips for how to kind of keep that more level or balanced?
Yeah, totally. I think one, it's like, it's something that you develop over time as you get better, as you get stronger aerobically. And, for one, that's kind of one part, right? Like the physiological side, like getting stronger aerobically. You're going to be able to maintain a lower heart rate on the hills. But I think there's also like this neuromuscular side to running the hills. So if you walk every hill you encounter, you won't develop kind of the neuromuscular side of the training that you need in order to like run those hills at a lower heart rate. And so like for me and for the athletes that I coach, anybody on this team, like we're always talking about like those light, quick strides, right? Turnover We're doing stride, speed work, and everything to kind of make it easier to move our feet faster. And so like on the hill, it's super important. Like if we're backing off the effort, right? Like, because the first thing that comes to mind when you get to a steep hill, oh my God, my effort's going to go up. I'm going to get out of breath. So I have to go slower, right? So even when we're going slower, we can still increase that turnover and keep those steps like really, really light. And on days where you feel good, I would recommend like trying some of those hills like that. And even if your heart rate climbs a little bit, that's okay. Let that happen. But just know that if you're feeling good, that's appropriate. And if you're feeling tired, maybe you're feeling stressed, you had a big week. If your heart rate is climbing, you're putting more acute stress onto your system, right? So like that's not a good response if you're feeling stressed, if you're not recovering well from workouts, etc. So that would be the moment to walk. So it's kind of like that balance. Light, quick strides. Try to stay away from like those big lunging steps. The more steps, the better. The more you lunge and bound up the hill, the higher your heart rate's going to get, because you need more force, like muscular force, to bound up the mountain and to bound up the hill with those big kind of like long strides. So keep it light, back your effort off. On days where you're out on your easy runs, if you're feeling good, practice a few hills like that. If you find yourself getting really out of breath at the top, maybe run half, walk half. And then on days where you're really stressed, you're feeling tired from the training, always walk. And that's something that I actually do on my runs. Even, as a highly trained athlete, like on my recovery days, I have some hills around here and I walk them. Because that's the only way that I'm going to keep my heart rate in the area that I'm looking for, like a zone 1 recovery heart rate, like extremely low 130s or upper 120s or something. So like have no shame in walking when you need to, when it like fits the kind of underlying intention behind your training. And then when you're feeling good, experiment with it, because if you never try the hills, you won't ever get good at them. You can be really quick around town, you can develop your aerobic system, but if you don't actually try to run up those hills a little bit, you'll never develop the neuromuscular side. So like you'll always be at a little bit of a disadvantage. Did that make sense?
Yeah, that was a really good answer. And I think there's also something you said. I think this is more of like a Friday Kylie question about eating while going uphill or downhill. I know that I have a friend who is a different coach, but she's doing Western states, and we've been chatting a little bit, and she mentioned that it's better to eat a gel on your way down a hill than it is on your way up the hill, and which is pretty counterintuitive, because a lot of people, if you're walking up the hill, it's easier to rip a gel, suck it down, but that's actually harder on your stomach than it is to do that on the downhill. So that was news to me. That was super interesting.
Okay, let me say, we've talked about this before, but I think it was like 6 or 8 months ago,
Okay.
of like eating on long runs and eating during long like races and things like that. My advice, which is shared by other coaches, is actually a good time to eat or to add more fluids is on a longer climb, particularly while you're power hiking. And there's a few reasons behind that. One, normally when you're power hiking, your heart rate's going to be lower. There are many reasons why you want your heart rate lower when you're power hiking, especially in a long race. But the first one is basically managing your effort out there. For, as you get better at running, you're going to want to fly on the downhills and you're going to want to run on the flats. And it's a great opportunity to kind of rest your aerobic system on those climbs. When your heart rate is lower, the blood that's circulating around your body, it's not going to be, going to your skin to keep you cool, because your heart rate's going to be lower. So your system is kind of going to be going back to homeostasis. Blood's going to be going back to your digestive system. Great opportunity for eating. would highly recommend, like, if you're having a tough long run, having tough time digesting your food, consider, hiking some climbs to kind of cool off your system, bring your heart rate down, and then trying to eat in those moments. The reason why we don't, and this isn't true for everybody, but one of the main reasons why you don't want to eat while you're running downhill or drink when you're running downhill is because there are a lot more impact forces associated with running downhill. And all of those impact forces mean that your digestive system is going to be jostling inside your body. Just think about that. If you're power hiking uphill or running uphill, you're really close to the ground. Your system is a lot more stable. When you're running downhill and there's rocks and there's all these things and you're moving all around and your arms are going like that to keep your balance, your insides are doing that too. So if you're trying to eat at the same time that you're doing that and take in a whole bunch of electrolytes and whatnot, and your insides are just going to be going like that and everything is sloshing around. I know many people who have experienced that sloshing feeling on a run, especially towards the end of a long hot run where it's getting hard to digest. So again, like, I always tell my athletes, like, the uphill is a great opportunity to eat. If you're feeling at all worried about like how you're digesting, and if your stomach is having trouble tolerating what you're eating, don't eat on the downhills for a while. Take a break there because your system is getting, thrown through the ringer on those descents. Unless of course you're needing to walk some descents, that might be a different scenario. But what I'm talking about is when you're running the downhills. Yeah, that's all I got on that.
I know, I appreciate that a lot because I like a lot of times I'm always like, oh, how do I like hike uphill and breathe and eat and maybe drink water and breathe all at the same time? Because sometimes it just feels like there's just so much going on, that but it absolutely makes sense that you should be eating on the uphill and not on the downhill.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to, like, in my longer races, I often think of that uphill as like almost a recovery opportunity to get the heart rate back down. Because if the terrain is steep and you have to hike, you can only go so, it only makes sense to go so hard. So even if you're racing it, trying to be competitive or pushing against your cutoffs, whatever it is, that uphill can be a great opportunity to bring the heart rate down. To kind of just sink into your effort, rebalance, maybe eat a little bit of food. I know for me, if I'm running downhill and I prefer to do like more mountainous races. And so it can be really tricky to like try to eat and watch where your feet are going and not fall on your face. Grabbing a gel from your waistband or your vest and, not tripping. People can do that well. They're very talented at multitasking. I'm a one thing at a time kind of.
Anytime there's an opportunity for me to fall or superwoman or trip and fall on my face, I'm usually like first person in line. Like it's usually just guaranteed to happen.
I feel like then it's like always good to just like, all right, let's just one thing at a time. Running down is very difficult.
Yeah.
So let's like save the eating for when it's flatter, gentler terrain.
I need people to make those decisions for me though, so I can just like save that brain power for other things.
Totally. That's where the crew comes in handy.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice. All right, well, I like that. Like it's so important to kind of find those times in races where they just feel more opportune for you for fueling. For some people, that's around the aid stations. For me, that's trying to stick to like very precise timing, like every 20 minutes or so, give or take the terrain. I never risk eating that gel every 20 minutes if I'm on a downhill where like my health could be put in jeopardy by taking my eyes off the ground and the trail in front of me.
And I think that's exactly what happened to me. I know I was talking about the Black Canyon Trail earlier, but I took a pretty hard fall and had a stress fracture in my hand that like just healed. Because I was tearing open a gel, wasn't paying attention to where my feet were going, and then you know, tripped, rolled, landed in like an agave plant and just kind of laid there for a while and was like, am I alive? Like, what just happened? But
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's because I was eating on the downhill.
I felt like last Friday, I fell on my recovery run in town in front of like 15 construction workers. It was the worst. I fall like at least once a week. That's how I know that, like, you know, I don't know that I'm not present, I guess.
Yeah, I was telling these guys before you hopped on, I did a gravel race on Saturday, and in front of the entire start line, there were like 300 people across 3 different distances ready to start. And I didn't unclip before I hit the curb, and I wiped out so hard in front of so many people right before the race started. And I remember telling Colin, like, I hope Chris didn't see that. Chris is one of his coworkers, and like, we have a really good relationship with Chris, but I was like, he's never gonna let me live that down. So of course we finished, and Chris comes running up to us at the end, and he's like, dude, I saw your wipeout, you know? And I was like, no, I knew he was gonna see it. So it was bad. It was like, I have a bruise that's like this big on the inside of my right leg, just purple.
I was told when I got into trail running that whoever falls, if other people witness it, you have to buy them beer. And so I've never fallen on a trail run yet. Like, I'm like uber careful. I'll go slow, but I'm not buying anyone else beer.
I love that rule. That's so fun. I mean, I don't, because I would have to buy a lot of people beer, but that's a fun rule.
Drew, we'll have to go up to one of the state parks and go for a trail run sometime soon. See how it goes.
I'm dead serious about coming to hang out with you and Zoe for a week. If like we gotta deliver this baby in August, and then we're gonna have probably, I think I'm gonna be on lockdown until maybe next year. But then like I'm gonna do it. Like, we're gonna have like a Camp Carbondale, Camp Microcosm kind of thing where I want you and Zoe to kick my butt every day for a week.
That sounds great. Can I get signed up for that too?
It's open to the public. Anybody's welcome. Encourage it. It'd be really fun. Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Leadville reunion.
Guys. Yeah, well, cool. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for getting the call started early and or not early, on time. I was late. We need questions for this Friday's Coach's Corner. And I know all of you guys out there who are on this call and also going to be listening when we post this to YouTube. If you make it to the end of this call and you hear my public service announcement, we need these questions. We're running low. I can always ask the other coaches questions, but they may not be the kind of questions that interest you. So please reach out, send us an email. Yeah, cool. I hope everybody has a good night and a great week of training. Yeah, keep writing in those logs. Keep us updated.
Also, Caitlin's got some questions she's going to email. Bye, guys.
Email them. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.